Hello there, welcome back to the channel. This is Nerd World, where I like to look at all things nerdy, and in this episode we're going into Star Trek, and we're going to be looking at the Freedom class starship. Not the one from the JJ verse, but the one with the single nacelle. Sometimes known as the only example of it as the USS Firebrand, this was a vessel that was a descendant of earlier designs, famous for being one of very few Federation starships to only have the single nacelle configuration. Before we get started, please like, share, subscribe, and comment down below. And, of course, after that little intro, let's get started on the Freedom class starship. The Freedom class starship was the successor of earlier classifications of Starfleet vessel, such as the Saladin class destroyer. This vessel was developed as part of a fleet revitalization program that took place from the 2330s onwards, that included the development of such vessels as the Galaxy class starship and Nebula class starships eventually. This vessel, you could tell from the basic hull geometry, was part of this same family group of vessels. It was approximately 430 meters in length and was designed for a multi-role purpose. Its primary role was Federation defense, as it was a type of destroyer/escort vessel for larger starships and patrol duty, but was also equipped and designed for light scientific duties, including basic exploration, survey missions, and transportation. In terms of firepower, there are different conflicting reports which could just indicate different variations within the fleet in terms of the ship's firepower potential. This varies from having 5 phaser hardpoints to 8 phaser arrays, including, but not limited to as well, some vessels having a large so-called mega phaser mounted ventrally in the center of the saucer section. They standardly were equipped with 2 forward-facing photon torpedo launchers, but some of them would also have an aft torpedo launch capability also. They carried a crew of approximately 300 to 370 officers and personnel aboard ship. They of course had auxiliary craft such as shuttles and could carry other craft if needed. Although these vessels were not as glorious or as glamorous as the larger, more impressive ships in the fleet, such as the Galaxy-class starships that would succeed them years later, these vessels nonetheless served such a role like the Saladin class, which was quite useful to Starfleet, picking up secondary roles further back in space and closer to home, particularly along borders such as the Romulan neutral zone, and would participate in conflicts against the Cardassians and the Borg. Originally, Starfleet was thought to have planned to build 100 of these vessels, but no, anywhere between 30 and 50 were only ever constructed, with the class eventually being decommissioned after the Battle of Wolf 359, when the vessel's various shortcomings were strongly emphasized, with the destruction of the USS Firebrand, which was one of the premium examples of the starship, which was as heavily armed as they could come. All the phaser arrays, the torpedo launchers, as well as the mega phaser to augment its offensive and defensive capabilities. In terms of shielding and armor, the vessel did have an armored hull, but only had standard shielding, and armored hull for a vessel of this particular hull configuration really did bugger all anyway. The single nacelle design is probably the ship's defining characteristic, but like many Federation vessels, it was actually designed to be quite modular, with other secondary classes coming away from this ship, which did have 2 nacelle configurations as well, such as the Akula class. But this vessel would be phased out and see very little, if any, action during the Dominion War, as little more than a courier or transportation or training vessel. Not really seeing direct frontline action, as like many other starships of the early to mid 24th century, designed during an era of peace, these vessels were not cut out for open war. But in their time, they did serve a vital function as a deterrent against the enemies of the Federation, policing and anti-piracy duties, which they performed exceptionally well, which is their intended role. They were not designed for open warfare. Even the vessels equipped with the mega phaser were only moderately more useful during such an engagement than the vessel standard of the class. Now, the only one we know about is the USS Firebrand, but there may have been another determined on-screen example called the USS Concord that was patrolling the Romulan neutral zone, but that's possibly apocryphal, we're not entirely sure. I personally like this ship. I think it's distinctive and unusual. Remember when I first saw it, I actually thought it was a fan design. I didn't know it had actually appeared at the Battle of Wolf 359. I thought it was some kind of kit bash, which was done by a fan. God, I was surprised when that turned out this was a canonical vessel. But let me know in the comments below what you think of the Freedom class starship. I'll probably do, I think, a little more of these unusual background ships, particularly from the Battle of Wolf 359. There's a lovely repertoire of vessels there to be exploited, which you just don't really see much of. It would have been nice to have seen a few more of them in the series, I think, but we'll start with this one, I think, branch out into some of the others. Again, like, share, comment down below, hit the bell notification icon if you want to, and also check out in the description below my other channels, Nerd World Order, Nerd World Films, and Nerd World History, that are all linked down there. Check them out. Like, share, subscribe over there also. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you for watching, and bye bye.